Dear friends, this is our VPC video devotional series. Today is Monday, June 10th, and we're in our second week of a series that looks at the book of Leviticus, the way in which a holy God makes it possible for broken people to come into intimate relationship. That's the general theme that we're dealing with, and I want to read to us a set of verses that frame this problem as it appears to us in the first 5 books of the Bible, the Pentateuch. In Exodus, we have the dramatic release of the people of God from slavery. They see the signs and the wonders in Egypt. They see pestilence. They see infestations. They see darkness cover the land. They see the Nile turn to blood. They see Pharaoh humbled. They are released. They make a run for it. They're trapped at the Red Sea. They see an army defeated without the loss of a single person. They move across into a new territory, into the wilderness. They are sustained by bread from heaven and quails that fall from above. And so they are water that comes from the rock. And so in all these ways, they sense the presence of God in spectacular ways. Then they meet God at the Holy Mountain and they receive the 10 Commandments and they make a covenant of promises to their liberator and the source of their salvation. And yet, just a few moments after that, a problem arises and they create a golden calf, they create idols out of trinkets and jewelry, they disobey the covenant, they defy God, and they rebel in spectacular fashion. This illustrates for me in the story form the idea of the darkness that lives within us, the depravity that can emerge at any point in our lives and our characters, in which we act against our own interests and do things that are irrational and destructive. That's happened, and it has created a breach in the relationship between God and his people, so that Moses, as we hear in Exodus 40, verses 34 and 35, he has built the tent of meeting by God's instruction, and God's glory comes down. But listen to what happens. The cloud covered the tent of meeting, and the glory of the Lord filled the tabernacle. This could be a moment of intimacy between Moses and God. Moses is the people's representative. But Moses was not able to enter the tent of meeting because the Lord had settled on it, and the glory of the Lord filled it. So this is the break in intimacy that happens through the darkness and rebellion that lives within us. Now, the story, in effect, is stopped between God and his people because the intimacy is temporarily over. We see, however, this problem is resolved at the beginning of Numbers. The story begins again. The Lord spoke to Moses in the wilderness of Sinai in the tent of meeting. So here intimacy has been restored on the first day of the second month, the second year after they had left Egypt. In between is the book of Leviticus. And in the book of Leviticus, God provides a set of rituals and sacrificial practices that allow sinful people to draw near to God, to come near to God. This chapter and these dramatic developments raise for us the issue of what is our theology of brokenness? How do we understand the human predicament? At some point in our lives, there'll be a moment of recognition where we see our life reflected in someone's eyes and it doesn't look good. Or we come into the presence of God and we become aware of a brokenness that lives in us, like the people of God did long ago when Moses came back down the mountain and they were confronted with their rebellion and their wantonness and their betrayal of the covenant. We'll have one of these moments where our typical strategies of evading and minimizing and blaming others just don't work, and we're kind of stuck in this guilty moment of awareness of our own brokenness. How do we understand those moments? What's the language that we use? Well, in the Sermon on the Mount, we have in the Reformed version of it, most congregations say, ask for forgiveness, forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. This is an economic image that talks about owing. And when we hurt someone, we say we owe them an apology. That expresses this idea of debt. Jesus uses this same image when he tells the story of the unpayable debt, which is forgiven by a king, and then the person who's forgiven goes out and refuses to pass that along and doesn't forgive someone who owes him a paltry sum. So is not changed by the goodness of God who forgives our debts. This notion of debt is one way of looking at it. We can ask ourselves in those moments, we can use this image to ask ourselves, do we owe anyone anything? In the same way, you may have been in churches that have used not the word debt to ask for forgiveness in the Lord's Prayer, but the word trespasses. Forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. And here you have the picture of a boundary, breaking into privately owned land, or invading a space that's not your own, to take something from someone that isn't yours, their dignity, their innocence, to use somebody for your own purposes in a way that doesn't treat them as fully a person. All of that is connected to this idea of trespassing, of a boundary that is crossed. And this image also is a powerful one. And we ask ourselves, where am I out of bounds in my life? Where have I ignored the line and gone over? And so these are ways we can become more honest with God using those images. Let's take a moment and pray. Lord, forgive us for the moments when we cross the boundaries into forgiven territory, or when we owe folks things because of the way we have mistreated them. Thank you for inviting us to come near and allowing the broken to be in the presence of the holy, the tainted in the presence of the perfect. We ask this in your Son's name. Amen.